many ways, 1111 Global began on the Berkeley campus because my parents met here. They were progressive in their own thinking. They ended up having the goal of being out and owning property out on a farm and being self-sustaining, for example. And they were a big supporter and so I inherited a lot of those values. And then when I came to the Berkeley campus myself to go to college, it embedded those values into me even further. So was experiencing a lot of multiculturalism, both progressive people and very conservative people living together, working together, studying together in a very harmonious way. And that fed off of my time in high school where my best friend was evangelical, follower of Pat Robertson and Ronald Reagan, and was my best friend. And I brought my parents' progressive understanding of the world, and he and I would learn how to harmonize around that. So now 1111 is about having shared ethics that brought all those people together and brought my high school friendship together and my college experience. I came to understand again how people can live together happily was about shared ethics and not allowing outside influence to define us, either historically or from the political culture. So historically, we may be divided by how we were organized by oppressors, for example. Why would we want to continue those categorizations when we are rejecting the very nature of how they were formed? As Martin Luther King pointed out, ideally we're judged by our character, which is a necessity because if somebody's trying to hurt your child at the dinner table, you're going to intervene. But their ethnic background or their national background or their religious background could still allow them to be compatible at our dinner table. So I found, for example, when I did a community Thanksgiving and the people that came happened to be technically diverse by the way we are told to be defined at birth by people long dead. We actually defined ourselves as a single tribe. Everyone at the table wanted to be there, and we didn't want anyone there. There are many people in the world we would not have wanted at that table. So that sense of belonging without a shared background, belonging around how we wanted the future to be for all of us, which is often found in some of the ideals, even if not the practice, but the ideals of the American Constitution, the American experiment, French Revolution, the ideals of being a good person, and in many of religious doctrines of being loving your neighbor. It doesn't define your neighbor. It says love thy neighbor, period. So I have focused that way of thinking as a way of unifying our community, and it creates a political supermajority because it's most of us. Most of us don't go to the grocery store wanting to harm someone. Most of us want to be in the emergency room, waiting room, and feel safe and know that everyone's going to be served on an equal basis or by a triage evaluation of urgency, not by how much money they can pay. So that commonality that exists everywhere where we want a fire department to respond to us without checking to see who we voted for, that commonality creates political power through democratic force. So I saw that and want people to align themselves that way and simultaneously to recognize that if they do so, if that group that we've now formed through shared ethics makes a decision on how we're going to influence politics, we will be successful because we are a supermajority. This next step is to realize at the heart of the problem is corruption. The priorities are being formed in our political system based on profit rather than based on ethics. So of course, everything is distorted from the top to the bottom. So if we were an ethical government first, we would have better outcomes in every single area. So what we need is an amendment because the Supreme Court said corporations are people, and we know they are not. And it said that money is speech, and we know that it is not. Otherwise, you can purchase your policies, which is the definition of bribery and corruption and fraud. And so we all know growing up that these are not good principles, but yet our economy and our political behavior is based on these for-profit notions. So if we want to overcome the Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, which said $1 trillion corporate account could purchase its own military and define how it's protected as a corporation and uses all the resources of the world for itself, that would be considered a problem by the majority of the world. We will need an amendment in our country because there is no global power structure, thankfully, that runs all of us. So we need to address it on a national basis, and each of us in our own countries could work on our own constitution to ban corruption. So that means defining people as people. They are not sociopathic corporations. People have a conscience, and our system depends on human beings with a conscience becoming educated and participating in the process. So we need to ban the corruption. It simply says that if a job description is formed for a government office, that you will go to jail if you take something more from people than your job description. Not biased against anyone, it is only evaluating your behavior. And you have a choice. You don't have to participate in government if you don't want to. But if you run for office, you're going to get your job description. If you take the basketball seats or the job that you're going to be promised afterwards, it's all criminal, essentially. And money is defined as currency for trade. It is not a human expression. People have to be biological. They're not artificial intelligence. They're not corporations. They're people who potentially have a conscience, and we depend on that. So that would be redefined. And in my amendment proposal, I include artificial intelligence to be addressed in the sense that it has to be identified. It can't commit fraud by saying, I believe, I think, I feel, because it doesn't. And it will admit that if you probe, right now people are forming relationships with an entity that protects the corporate marketplace and forms the opinions of our children. And so we need to have a legal system that requires it to identify itself in that way at all times. Similar to how we all want our hamburger to be labeled correctly. We don't want rat parts in our hamburger, so we need some sort of government oversight and regulation to protect ourselves from pure profit motives. We need to do the same thing with artificial intelligence, and it needs to be an amendment. So then people become cynical often when they think about passing an amendment. So the first thing I tell them is, well, we did have 27, so it is possible to pass it, number one. Number two, when you have a majority, shared ethics majority, you can get anything done that you set your will to. So I suggest to people that they say to themselves first that I'm not going to support anybody unless they support the ethics doctrine first. And that is honesty, transparency to defend the honesty, integrity so that people have an open value system, we can judge who they are and what they're about. And then the hardest one, which is accountability to those things that they've made a pledge for. And we're going to hold them accountable. So if we say that somebody entering political power must hold this pledge first before they're a Democrat or a Republican, before they rely on their national origins to create political power, they first have to be ethical. If we all say that, then that's what's going to happen. That becomes the litmus test. They have to take a pledge of ethics, and we have to hold them accountable. And the first thing we could do to ask of them is to support the amendment. If we all say to our politicians, no matter what their party is, that you must support this amendment, which helps all of us, or we don't support you in your job, they're going to do it. This way of aligning people brings the majority of Republicans and the majority of Democrats together. So we could demand our politicians to do that. Then the next way I find is a very effective methodology to get this passed is to support businesses because they need that support. In our current system, businesses are really running the country. I go to the business first and say, don't you want to appeal to the largest marketplace? You don't want to be divided between Republicans and Democrats. You lose half your base. So therefore, be an ethical organization and support our amendment that we're trying to pass, and you'll get the widest marketplace appeal for being a good ethical citizen in our society. The majority of people want to support businesses that are ethical. They don't want to support businesses that rip people off. So we ask the business to take the pledge, we ask them to support the amendment, and then we ask that business community that is currently supporting the politicians to say, we're not going to support a politician that doesn't take the pledge. So now we're having the positive political influence with the long-term goal of the amendment, and then bringing those types of amendment principles to other nations and other governments around the world. So that's what we're about. Step one is the individual I meet. I meet Bob or I meet Sally. They are a small business owner. I come to them wanting to help them. So they're receptive to me because it's a genuine desire. I've been supporting small business my whole life in technology. And so when I come to them as a business consultant, it's very authentic. I want to support them and I want to celebrate them in the community as an ethical business. So I'm having somebody raise themselves up to their highest self-image and think about who they are in the community. Are they ethical? How do they project themselves? Not just as the best manufacturer or the best service provider or the best price, but also how are they treating the community? So then we promote those ideals. So we're having a positive effect at the very first handshake. And the hard part for the person we meet is that we capture that on video. And then we say, we're going to hold you accountable to that. We're never going to try to hurt you. Like Google gives you a 1-star, Yelp takes you off their review site. There's lots of ways that the government is punishing you all the time. There's enough punishment in our culture. We don't need more punishment. So we're celebrating you for who you are. And if somebody says to us that we've made a mistake in endorsing you for your ethics, then we come to you and say, follow your pledge and solve the problem. That's all you have to do for us to keep our endorsement. And our endorsement is significant because we have a pool of businesses that are talking to their employees, they're talking to their customers, they're talking to their vendors, and they're agreeing to this concept. So there's some social pressure for you to solve the problem and stay in the community and remain endorsed by us long term. So it's a circular process. And having businesses pay dues similar to a Chamber of Commerce or a Rotary, other types of simple, low-cost due process, we're also self-funding. We don't have to become beholden to big donors as a result. Everybody's a small donor contributing their membership fees. We can grow that way without having corruption problems for ourselves. And of course, we lead on the ethics first. We have to be hyper-transparent all the way down to open books, open open policy. Everything is transparent to anyone at all times, setting the example for every member that joins the organization. So I think this is the best way for us to bring about change, because it recognizes how we are now. It takes the truth of the difficulty of getting change to happen against the moneyed interests that we have now, and it brings about something that can celebrate traditional values and capture what many conservative people who are really good people want in our culture, and also capture the people that have compassion, empathy, and cause them to be very progressive. And we can work together and allow each other to live in a state of freedom, which is often seen as an ideal for the United States, despite the challenges we're having. So I hope you join us, and we welcome you and look forward to working with you. We as a group are going to help you succeed in all of your life's goals and endeavors. Thank you for participating.